And joining us to discuss this further is Grant Newsham, retired U.S. Marine Colonel, former U.S. diplomat, and senior fellow at the Center for Security Policy. So, Colonel, good afternoon to you. And according to a U.S. Navy fact sheet, it says that the battleships will be the most lethal warship to be ever built. The first two expected to be within operation in 2.5 years. Can you put into perspective how much more powerful will these ships actually be, these Trump-class battleships, compared to what the Navy has as of right now?
Well, if you put everything on it, it's going to have some new more modern kind of weapons, say lasers and rail guns, but it's also just going to have missiles like a lot of ships have. But it's important to look at this in the broader context. It's not just these two ships, but rather this is a bigger effort by the president, by the administration, to expand the U.S. Navy, to build more ships. So he's talking now about building, say, 2025 of these so-called battleships. And these are just bigger ships with more weaponry than the current Burt-class destroyers. But he's also going to build a lot of smaller ships that you use for sort of the bread and butter operations and roles in a navy. And these are based on an existing U.S. Coast Guard national security cutter models. These are smaller, less well armed, but nonetheless have armament. But also in the plan is to build 49 support ships. These are transports, oil tankers, replenishment ships, the things that keep the warfighting ships out at sea and are essential. So this is part of a much broader scheme. I think the focus is perhaps a little too narrow on these two battleships and Mr. Trump declaring them or calling them battleships and people saying it's the Trump class. I think too much focus is going on that, but it's the bigger perspective that's required. And if this is the thing that revitalizes, indeed resuscitates the U.S. Navy's shipbuilding numbers and capabilities and commercial shipbuilding in the U.S., then it's a good thing. We will see.
Okay, then let's talk about the bigger picture here. When Trump's vision is fully realized, how do you think that's going to put the U.S. Navy's capacity, for conflict to comparing to other nations' ability of their Navy?
Well, we're going to be hard pressed. What we've been sleeping, at least our uniformed admirals, the perfumed princes, and high level civilians have been sleeping for 25 years and allowed the Chinese to build up a very impressive Navy with about 350 warships, and they're turning them out rapidly. Well, we're stuck at about 290 or so, and we have to cover the whole world. The Chinese don't. So we've got to catch up. So even if everything that President Trump wants to do comes to pass, it's going to take some time, and the Chinese are not standing still. They have built an impressive Navy. It's limited in how far it can project power, but they intend to be a global military. Where we do have an advantage is if we could get our allies to be able to work better, operate better with us, and to actually be prepared to fight a war with us, we'd be in a lot better shape. For example, if you add in the 50, 60 ships in the Japanese Navy, well, that's a nice addition. The Australians, their 11 ships would be nice as well, maybe the South Koreans. So you put the free nation navies together and get them so that they can actually operate effectively. That changes the balance pretty well. But if it's just the U.S. versus the People's Liberation Army Navy, we've got a fight on our hand for some time to come. But if this is a change in really national willpower in the U.S. towards once again becoming a maritime nation like we've always been, then it's a good thing. But we've sort of dug ourselves into a hole, and now we have to get out of it.
So why do you think that is? Why do you say that the U.S. has dug itself into a hole? What has contributed to that? What is the reason? And what needs to be done in order to dig the U.S. out of it? Do you think with the U.S. with President Trump's vision that after it is fully realized that the U.S. would no longer be in this hole?
Well, if you go back about 25 years, remember when the Cold War ended, and the idea was the Americans, democracy won. We would never face any more enemies. There would be no real adversaries we had to worry about. So all we needed to do was build things like the Littoral Combat Ship, which was a piece of junk, basically. The Zumwalt class destroyer, which they produced exactly two of those. The Constellation class program that was canceled recently, the Ford carrier, aircraft carrier class that's had problems. It's been one disaster after another, and it appears as though leprechauns are responsible for it. But you'll notice that within the Navy and the hierarchy, nobody's been sort of called to account for one failure after another. So we thought that we didn't really face any threats. There were no urgencies. China wasn't an adversary, even, it was just going to be a competitor. And then you had on the business class where everything was return on investment. And U.S. commercial shipping industry, it declined to where, as I said, we're 200 times below or less than the Chinese have. So they're turning out ships a lot faster than us, military and commercial. Basically, the nation went insane, and people who were responsible for that are to blame. It's not supernatural forces. But now what you do is you catch your breath and you realize what we're capable of. And you are going to have to resuscitate our commercial shipbuilding industry and our military shipbuilding industry. This isn't hard. It just takes leadership, resources, and some money. And people say money's scarce. Well, there seems to be plenty that's around for fraud and being stolen elsewhere in the budget. But if it's national defense, the money's there if people want it. I don't expect Capitol Hill or Congress to be forking over much cash, but it will take some clear thinking, a recognition of the threat we do face from our adversaries, China, Russia, even North Korea. The Iranians have a few ships as well. But it does take a sense of urgency and leadership. And President Trump is the first president that I can remember who has actually addressed this issue head on. And now we'll see what his administration and what the Navy, both uniformed and civilian, can come up with, and whether the commercial ventures will actually step up as well. Maybe they will if they see some consistency coming from the government. But this idea that all that mattered was the lowest bid, and producing things anywhere on Earth didn't matter. Well, that's gotten us into an awful lot of trouble. There's only something like 70 or 80 American flag transport ships. There needs to be a lot more than that. So we're in trouble, but we've been in bigger fixes before, but we'd better hurry.
It's been advancing its naval capability. I'm just thinking here because, let me just say that again, Colonel. You said China has been advancing its naval capability. So I'm wondering here, because just last week, the U.S. announced the sale of the largest weapon package to Taiwan. Will these new battleships and Trump's vision, the announcement, is that going to increase the level of deterrence of a potential Chinese invasion of Taiwan?
It could, but it mostly in the sense that it shows a will to actually defend yourself. Because all these ships the plans that have been announced by President Trump, by the Navy, these are going to take some time to actually expand numbers. But we do have a lot of hardware available, both at sea and in the air, and even on the ground, that would make life pretty miserable for the People's Liberation Army if it goes after Taiwan. But it is the demonstration of will on the part of the United States that is as important as anything. The specific weapons that are being supplied to Taiwan, these are things that are very useful for a defense, and they are things that a Chinese invasion force would not want to have to deal with. You do need to get them quickly to Taiwan. So the more a country can defend itself, a big country or small one, the more stabilizing that is. It tends to cause the schoolyard bullies to back off when they see that their intended victim is willing to fight back and give them a bloody nose, if not more.
Well, all right, Colonel, great insight as always. Thank you so much for coming on today, and Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Yes, Merry Christmas to you as well. Thank you very much.